Okay, welcome from Dallas. Recording here midday Tuesday. I'm here for the Celtics. There's a lot of breaking news, but we are a day after Patriots minicamp, but that's what this podcast is about. So we're going to talk some football with Jeff Howe. He's going to love this. NFL National Insider for The Athletic. I don't actually know if you love it. I know I've asked you that. It's always the running bit when I have you on, but in all seriousness, I really appreciate the time. You were at minicamp yesterday. We have a lot to get to. But as far as that bit and how much you love it, or any Dallas thoughts, you want to lead off with something different?
I mean, Porzingis' random leg tear that is apparently day to day kind of scares the hell out of me. I don't love that. I love the title, the way that you introduced me a whole lot more than I love the tendon hanging off of Porzingis' leg.
Yeah, I learned some new things about human physiology coming here down to Dallas. I learned that downtown is like the least downtown feel of any big city that I've ever been in. And now, like I said, we're going to talk Patriots. Because look, when I, started on the beat, I'll be honest to you, Porzingis stuff aside, I wanted to have recaps that look like yours. And you were back here today. So I joked with you right off the top. I was like, okay, are you going for 2,000? Because I'm going for 3,000 words in every little detail that we saw, because that's the job, is take people where they cannot go, tell them things that they cannot know. So you and I just admitted before we got on air, we have not read each other's recap. So this will be good, authentic, just takes of, not knowing what the other person's going to say. The takeaway, though, obviously it has to start with Drake Maye. Everything does this time of year. And so the Patriots practice on Monday. That's what we're talking about. They were off today doing community stuff. They'll be back at practice on Wednesday. Are you going to practice tomorrow, Wednesday?
Yep. Yeah, I'll be there in the morning and then for the Brady event at night.
Okay, great. So you will have, I assume, another 5,000 words coming out of practice, but we're just going to have to deal with today because I was there. We will have more thoughts for folks who listen to this podcast regularly next week to recap Wednesday. But I wanted to bring in Jeff for that reason. And because I got to be honest, when I was thinking about who I wanted to have on this podcast, it hit me way too late. And it hit me at a time that you're not going to like this part, but I'm sitting on the plane early this morning coming to Dallas. Like, who was at practice yesterday? We've had a lot of people. Doug, Jardy was just on. And then the guy next to me on this plane, 2-seater row, nowhere to go. I'm on the inside. Starts tearing ass in his sleep. It reminds me of the story you told when you came on last summer, and I'm asking you stories about your training camp tour. And the first thing is not like, oh, sitting and talking with Sean McVay, which I think you hit on, or being in Tennessee and Nashville. It was, I took this plane ride. I felt like I was, Dutch oven the entire time. And that's my story. And I remember just having this sense of like, oh, that sucks. But also, oh, that was the decision, the story he told. Anyway, that happened to me. I said, let me text Jeff. He was there. He'll have as many notes as anybody. So welcome in again, I guess.
I am happy that somebody else's farts could make you think of our common life experiences.
Yeah, the dude was knocked out in a way that I am envious of because I don't sleep that well on planes. It's always like the head bobbing, slamming against the side of the window. He was just out, mouth open. Other things were open. It just was just a lot of this for the YouTube folks. Cover the nose with the shirt. And anyway, we're moving on. As promised, football. Okay, man. Here were the stats that I had, because this is, what we tweet, what we report, the things that we can show and tell you, even though they don't capture everything. They're not perfect. What is? In all team periods, 11 on 11s and 7 on 7s, completed 75% of his passes. He had 2 2-minute drills. Neither of them scored. But here's the thing. Jacoby Brissett was the only one who did score in these 2-minute drills, had 1 out of 7. It led to a field goal, and that was it. Dominant defensive day. Within 11 on 11s, Drake Maye was statistically better than Jacoby Brissett, 12 of 17, granted with 2 sacks, one of which ended his initial 2-minute drill. So that's the backdrop. That's the summary. Diving into something deeper than the cliff notes. A, do you think he had a good or great day? Because there were differing opinions on the beat. And whichever answer you choose, why was it not good, just good, or why was it not great?
I would use encouraging more than either of those 2 words, but if I had to choose one, I would lean more toward good than great. I certainly would not characterize it as great, but there's a lot to that. And I thought he did a lot of things well. And for anybody who's listening who has not heard, I'm a big Drake Maye guy. I've been preaching his name since October and November. And I think this guy's potential is absolutely through the roof. So I want to make sure I preface it with that. But look, he's been practicing for less than a month. And with the veterans, even really less time than that. And you spread out those practices. He looks like a rookie, and he should look like a rookie. And I haven't been to Bears camp or Commanders camp, but I would be very surprised if either one of those guys is processing any quicker right now than Drake Maye is. There are going to be bumps, and they're expected, and that's going to happen. There were, I remember, or when I started, I'm kind of thinking back to some prior years' practice reports when everybody wanted to say, oh, check down Charlie about Mac Jones or whatever. And I'm not comparing the two, but I'm getting into the process. Why was I jotting down the reason for these checkdowns? And I thought there were a lot of productive checkdowns in Mac Jones' practice career. Again, not comparing the two guys. I'm just kind of going through my own process of note-taking. I had 5 checkdowns for Drake Maye on Monday, and I thought they were all the result of just being sped up too fast and making a decision that he was like, you know what? I'm not seeing the field completely yet. I'm not progressing as quickly as I would like to. I'm going to the open guy. So those weren't necessarily productive checkdowns. There were other times when he held the ball a little too long because, again, he was taking a little too long to process. What I did like was when he was decisive, and it was probably when that first read was there. But when he was decisive, my goodness, he could rip the ball. I know it's not the ideal drill, but that 7-on-7 deep red zone drill when he went 4 of 4 was outstanding. And eventually those are going to bleed into the 11-on-11 drills. The other part too is, to be fair, he was playing behind what I believe, you can say this better than I can, was largely a backup offensive line. So I thought there was a lot more pressure in his face than Jacoby had gotten. But look, I liked a lot of what he did. I know we're going to get into more of that eventually. But what held him back was the processing speed. But I would expect slow processing speed for any quarterback at this point in the year.
You mentioned that offensive line, and that is key context, which if we're zooming out, going back to Drake Maye, he, again, for the folks who don't know, took second quarterback reps behind Jacoby Brissett because this became a thing in May, going, oh my God, why is he number 3? I talked about this before. I don't care about the order. I care about the total number of reps. Those also went as follows. Jacoby Brissett, 30, Drake Maye, 29. Bailey Zappi, I think, was 14, and Joe Milton had 6 because Bailey Zappi's first 2-minute drill was 1 play long, and it went in the wrong direction because he threw a pick 6 to Kyle Duggar. So the offensive line, though, he being the second quarterback, you're working with the second offensive line for a team that has a bad offensive line talent-wise. You're going to work with players like the following. Calvin Anderson was his left tackle. Michael Jordan was his left guard. Nick Leverett / Antonio Mafi, who did not play center at all, I don't know about Leverett, were sending him snaps. Layden Robinson, 4th-round rookie at right guard. And then Caden Wallace, who's back at right tackle, and we'll get into more offensive line stuff anyway. But I'm glad you brought up the checkdowns because the way I captured it in my practice report was he looked like, to me, a seasoned backup, right? He did the simple things well. He didn't turn the ball over. He found those checkdowns. He had outlets versus pressure, a nice scramble up the middle, and I think the first or second period. I don't want to see a ton of scrambles. But you know what I don't want to see right now? I don't need any of the no-look throws. I don't need the cross-field bombs. I don't need the highlights. I know that's in there. What I don't know is a little bit of what he showed. Boring, move the ball, and keep it football with some of those progressions. Checkdowns are fine. I didn't know what that would look like until he got in here. If I wanted to see the highlights, I would just watch the UNC tape. So I'm with you. I think this was encouraging. It was not a great day full of highlights, but it was a good day just on those boring areas that he hits. I want to see boring until we really get into game action. I know he's got his answers against pressure because we talk about, oh, can you put him in too early? Yes, you can. But if he knows where to go with the ball when he's got pressure in his face, that's either going to physically harm him or ruin his confidence, then he can get around that. If he doesn't, that's when you're in danger.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of, I believe it was to Juju, immediate pressure off the right tackle, and he was able to basically get the ball out short of contact, and it was just a quick slant to Juju. But being able to make that quick read was important. There was a ton of pressure in his face. Off the top of my head, I want to say 4 of the 5 checkdowns were extremely premature or just, not the best play. Not a negative play. So yes, there is something to be said for that. but one of them was probably too much pressure in his face, so he got rid of it. That would be more along the lines of a good play or a good check down, a productive check down. So yeah, but like you can see him kind of mentally working through things. But I expected that. Like if he came out and was processing things, and all of a sudden it was like, oh my goodness, like you could see him go to his third read, and then he delivered that with confidence. Then we'd be sitting here and talking like irresponsibly, but like putting him in Canton. But that's, you got to take all this stuff with a grain of salt because of it's month one for him.
Are you ready to win this offseason? Like a long Drake Maye touchdown pass down the sideline, 7-on-7s, maybe OTAs, could be minicamp. Well, we're going to go from the field to the court to your phone, because Prize Picks is stepping up its game as America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members ahead of the finals, because the finals mean more on Prize Picks, and so do the star players. All you need to do is pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your money. Again, with Prize Picks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite team, the Celtics or sports, baseball, maybe the Red Sox, this summer. You just make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds, need to make a pick or more on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. That's it. I've used it for the same reasons I just outlined. It's simple, it's easy, and if I'm watching the Sox at home, heck, I'll fire up Prize Picks, put a little money down, and get a lot more back. So download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 on Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Now, let's go through the 2-minute drills, because I think that's, it's a 2-minute drill in minicamp, right? It's one day, it's one practice, not padded, all that stuff that I've been saying over and over and over and over again this spring. But I think those are the details that the people want and are a little bit more illuminating, because this is not only just 11 on 11. It's 11 on 11 against a defense that can pull out any trick out of its bag. And we know this Patriots defense has got a just absolutely massive playbook, and specifically for third down. So how is he processing? How's he reacting to pressure, identifying the mic, all these different things. And Jacoby Brissett, as I mentioned, led one to a field goal. His other 2-minute drill was 5 plays, ended in a sack. No good. Drake Maye started with a check down, and I had this as possibly a sack. Then he hits Juju, I think, on that slant that you were talking about. Incompletion, throwaway downfield. Jalen Reagor on a shallow cross to around midfield. Then a little bit of trouble. It was Jalen Reagor incomplete down the sideline on a go route. He has another drag route, this time to Michael Petway. Clock is running. He hits Antonio Gibson to get a couple more yards, again, just across midfield, and then takes a sack. And what was, an incompletion to Kayshon Boutte, where I don't think he felt the pressure. After that, this was a shorter drive. Check down to JaMychal Hasty. He had an incompletion to Juju versus Isaiah Bolden, who got a pass breakup. There was a deep crosser he found Jalen Polk on, which I got to be honest, I don't remember a ton about that play. I know it was a really nice throw, his best, I think, of the 2-minute drill. And then he took a sack, and then he found Juju down the seam. The problem with that was there were 2 seconds left on the clock. You can't throw it in bounds. And Kyle Duggar would have taken Juju's head off and walked it off the field, like the pick six that he had, if he had been allowed to tackle him in bounds, which is why they blew the whistle. The drive was dead. From those 2-minute drills, what stood out aside from the check down steal?
Yeah, that over route, I believe, was by the right sideline and was one of his better throws of the day. Yeah, I was actually we should have conferred on this one, because I was curious why that one got blown dead. I couldn't tell if it was a sack or not, but like you said, either way, that long seam route was it to Juju.
Yep.
He absolutely would have gotten lit up by the safety. So that's one of those where I'm sure Juju and Drake Maye are going to have a conversation after the film and say, please don't do that on Sunday to me. Yeah, I mean, those are high pressure, prideful periods where the offense and the defense are competing like crazy. So there's a lot of pressure. Those are, I would venture to guess, the most valuable periods of practice for the coaches, and it gives the guys in the locker room a lot of ammo to go at each other after practice to say who won those periods. The defense very clearly did. I think it was sort of an encapsulation of where the offense is as a whole. They're behind the defense. And part of that is there should be some nervousness there because this is a passing camp. They are set up to be conducive to offensive success. The other part where you just say, well, it's just so early in the process with a new coaching staff and a completely different quarterback room, so you're going to expect some of these growing pains against an experienced defense with a defensive-minded head coach who has a lot of experience running that exact same group. So, you take some of the good with the bad, and you just sort of understand it. One thing I did right today in my quarterback breakdown was that the big thing for me, I don't want to, take too much time on this topic for you because it's looking a lot further ahead, but like I would expect Jacoby Brissett to be the starter going into training camp. I don't care about that. What I really want to see is what week 3 looks like. When the pads are on and everything's a lot more difficult and Drake Maye has a chance to put all these days together and develop some consistency, that's when you really want to see him catch or surpass Jacoby Brissett. You're talking like August 15th, right around there. You're going to start to get some joint practices thrown in the mix. Not even about the preseason games as much. Those are a valuable step, no question. But like, I just want to see how they look against each. Not that I'm going to be there necessarily at this point, but what they look like if you're the fans, the writers, whatever, when you're there every day and you can really measure those guys and develop the consistency. That's when it's really most important to me. It's not about week 1 of training camp or anything like that. Or even honestly, like we're sitting here, going through every single one of his throws in day 1 of minicamp. Like there's some necessary context there too. Like I always used to point out during OTAs, there'd be 10 on the schedule. We would see 3. A guy could be outstanding in 70% or terrible in 77 of those 10 that are close to the media. And the reverse in the 3 that are open to the media, and we're all of a sudden making a little too much of that. Similar, that's why I always like minicamp, because
we wouldn't make too much of anything we hear in the media, would we, Jeff?
We would never do that. But minicamp is usually a chance to see a couple practices in a row, a little bit of a non-traditional breakup in the middle of this one, but the consistency for stuff like this is important. So you just want to see some of what we take what we saw Monday and try to figure out if the coaches saw the same thing and how they react to divvying up the practice reps on Wednesday, and whether some trends develop, because the trends in these settings are more important than anything.
You're absolutely right. And that leads me to the last question about Drake Maye, which we will not answer right away, but it continues what you're just hitting on here. And the question is, what can we say with certainty right now, June 11th, about Drake Maye? Spoiler alert, I'm going to say not much, right?
Yeah.
But because if anyone is certain right now about Drake Maye, when he's going to start, how he's going to look, how good he'll be in the National Football League, and again, I'm serious because I said it and spelled it out, not just NFL. I don't want to hear from them right now. No one knows. The Patriots don't know. Judon Mayo was asked a question yesterday about the kickoff rule and all these different teams that are planning, you're going to have a safety actually kick off because he needs to be a good tackler, and you really don't want Chad Riley in there as your last line of defense. And he said flatly, I don't know. And in the previous regime, that would be a deflection. Of course, Bill had spent all that time thinking about it. I'm open to the possibility Judon was just deflecting, but I think he's being authentic. And I know he's being authentic when he's asked about Drake Maye and says, we'll have to find out, because the trends you talked about, the consistency, doesn't happen in May. It doesn't happen in June. It's late July. It's all of August. It's early September. Practice after practice after practice in pads and the preseason. They don't know how he's going to react. So it is fun to be like, week 7, he's going to make his debut in London. That's what's going to happen, and start to build these scenarios. We don't know. Drake Maye doesn't know. Judon Mayo doesn't know. So I don't want to spend time on that. It's a great point that you make of like, the truth is in the trends. That goes for all of training camp, but especially the players you know the least about, which is going to be Drake Maye. It's going to be the rookies. It just makes for boring radio, TV, and podcasts to be like, damn it, I don't know. Because, well, then why would anyone listen? But that's why we have you on, and we start with stories about farting.
I'll pick 3 plays that stood out and try to go off of that. One was the scramble that he had, I think, in the second team period. Maybe it was the first team, whatever it was, very early. And like you said, you don't want to see scrambling from the quarterback in this setting. But I thought that was interesting because he quickly or immediately identified man coverage, and the middle of the field just parted like the Red Sea. And he was, it's tough from our angle, I would say 15, 20 yards downfield. And all of a sudden he's one-on-one with a safety. And you would just love to see how that would have played out in a live situation, because that could have been like a 60-yard touchdown run. Maybe it's a 20-yard gain. Either way, it's a good play because you've got a big physical quarterback who we know can run the ball, and saw something that he liked and he took advantage of it. So that was a good play. He had a throw in 7-on-7s in that deep red zone drill over a defender. It was probably a linebacker in a shallow zone, and he hit is it Bell, the rookie tight end, I believe, for a touchdown. Yeah, I mean, arcing over a leaping defender into the back part of the end zone, and that was just a really good example of identifying where he was going and making an outstanding throw. And not, I'm not as regular of an attendee in Foxboro as I used to be, but I haven't seen a throw like that at Gillette Stadium in quite a while. So
now let's stay there, because I think just really quickly, those two plays that you mentioned, and again, we don't know anything yet. We're going to need to see this over and over again to have trends, not just a single example. But the first one was obviously about his reaction athleticism. Second reaction, right? You drop back, you see the field. What are you going to do next? What's your second reaction? Sometimes it's extending plays. Other times it's scrambling. And again, I don't want to see young quarterbacks scramble a whole lot in minicamp, but he recognized exactly what was happening. You saw the takeoff speed in a way that goes, oh, they haven't had anyone who can do that playing quarterback. I mean, I would say you could go back to Cam Newton, is a little bit more dynamic than the past his prime Cam Newton that the Patriots got. Yeah. So that's new to this. Second part is the arm talent that you just hit on. Like, we're going to notice these things. I think people will once they get to training camp in the preseason. That's different from Mac Jones, even to a degree, late stage Tom Brady, that Drake Maye has. And that's why it's a new ball game as much as the new offense and offensive coordinator. How they're going to play and how he's going to play from the quarterback position will feel very, very different. Yeah, absolutely. And another play, actually two more. One I'll do quickly. I was later in the practice. They were coming in our direction. So it's probably one of those 2-minute drills, but like quick pressure in the pocket. He stepped up and delivered a throw with confidence. It was complete. I can't remember to who. I believe it was toward the left side of the field, but so much emphasis on his footwork. He had really good footwork, pocket presence, and an understanding of where his open guy was going to be. So that was, again, like I'm sitting here criticizing him for a slow processing speed, but it wasn't on every single play. So there were times when he absolutely was able to get away from it, or get away with it. And then there was another play. It was an incompletion, but it stood out to me. It was during 7-on-7s, and he had an over-under concept, and the under going to his left, so our right, was wide open immediately. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, that's an easy completion, catch and run, going to be a good play. And it was almost like as Drake Maye looked at it, he saw there was, I don't remember if it was a linebacker or a safety playing up, was kind of creeping toward where that receiver was going to get open. And that was probably going to be, if not a batted pass, an interception. And Maye completely broke off it, and he went to the over route to the right side of the field, and it was incomplete. I don't remember if it was good coverage or a bad throw or whatever it was. I think it was more good coverage. It was a drop.
Oh, it was a drop. Okay.
So just to jump in this, because it was a deep cross from Michael Petway, the tight end, who had a linebacker right underneath him and a safety converging. So this is a kind of second, third level throws. I mean, it was middle-ish of the field, going right hash, and he layered it in. That you're going, again, talk about different ways that the Patriots are going to experience a quarterback and quarterback play this entire season. That throw was it. That was my favorite throw. It was an incompletion, like you said, dropped by Michael Petway, who also had a huge touchdown grab. But it was, I missed the processing part, so I'm glad you brought that up, missing the underneath route, because the deep over was just pinpoint.
Yeah, and I liked that because it shows that, again, backing up, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but like the slow processing speed, which is expected, but he processed that in the exact time that you would want him to. And if it was a mistake that he's going to make plenty of mistakes like that in training camp. But he avoided that one. And I thought, tip of the hat to him for getting out of what was going to be very realistically a bad play and turning it into what was, an incompletion because of a drop. But I thought he deserved a lot of credit for checking out of that.
Yeah. And for the folks who, might be listening to me saying, oh, I missed this, and you didn't realize that. There are 22 people on the field. Early instances, we're looking at who's the offensive line combination, who is that guard. Oh, they just swapped him out. Mike Onwenu's playing right tackle for some of Jacoby Brissett's drives. Then he's at right guard. Why are they doing that? Who's in his place? Who's on the sideline? Is someone injured? There's a lot going on in training camp. It's not to excuse us, But a lot of times, your favorite reporters, whether they're on this podcast or not, are asking other ones, hey, what did you have on this? Just to double check. So it's not that we're not paying attention. It's just like any football game. It's just a practice. There's a lot to take in. Let's end on quickly the question that I mentioned and teased earlier. What can we definitively say about Drake Maye? Understanding this is not going to be much, but something you know now. This is my favorite question to players and coaches this time of year. What do you know now, and this goes to you, that we didn't know at the start of OTAs, mid-April, or obviously in May's case, early May?
That's a hard one for me to answer just because I'm not there every day. Because what I liked was that he completed, let's see, I think you said 75%. I think I had 76%. I would venture to guess the discrepancy there is because maybe you or I counted plays that got blown dead or called as sacks and one of us kept them or whatever. I going back basically 10 years, so a large sample size, Tom Brady was usually between 70 and 75% in this type of setting. So I've always set the bar at like, you want to be in that window. That doesn't mean you're going to complete 70 to 75% in the regular season, but given everything that we've said and the constructive criticism about eventually that processing speed is going to come, eventually, you don't give them all the points for the checkdowns that kind of boost those numbers. But for a guy who is still learning, and again, it's one practice. I'm talking 70 to 75% over the course of an entire stretch of practices.
Oh, a whole training camp. That's where those numbers come from.
Yeah. Training camp is usually closer to 70%. If you can get between like 68 and 72, that's pretty good. Minicamp more often, or OTAs and minicamp between 70 and 75. You want it on the higher side of that. So in a one-off setting, that's a really good number to be at while you're still very clearly working through some natural inexperience.
Okay. I would say this again, we don't know anything, but what we can say is what we've heard and seen. And what we've heard from teammates is consistently he's asking the right questions. Drake Maye stumbling into him, in the quarterback room alone, and it's a beautiful picture to paint. The exact thing you would want to say as a head coach. I'm not saying it was contrived in a PR meeting before they got to the microphone, but if they were to paint the picture, did not happen. That's something everyone is going to love and can picture in their head. But whether it's KJ Osborne saying Drake came up to me about a route adjustment when I was working with Jacoby Brissett in an OTA practice a couple weeks ago, or it's his offensive lineman or Rhamondre Stevenson, they're all saying the same things. That I don't think is at all contrived. So for a kid who, yes, is still 21, yes, is still picking up a new system and learning how to process an NFL speed, it seems that his work ethic, in addition to his talent, which was evident in college, is real. How far does that carry him will depend on context, his teammates, the coaches, obviously. But for Drake Maye, it seems like he's going to reach the maximum potential that he can have on his part. At least, again, we don't know, but that's encouraging to me. This is not a guy who has stalled out in OTAs and minicamp, or B, received anything less than glowing endorsements, which matches up with what I'm seeing. Again, it's in the practice stats, it's in just the plays that we just cited, and it's afterward in the press conference. It's just all aligned. It's going in one direction, and that direction says he's getting better. And again, we don't know where that's going to go or how much better he's going to be, but that's what we know, and that's encouraging. Your word at the top. Not good, not great, encouraging.
There we go. We've reached common ground.
I said Rhamondre Stevenson. He put a big, giant smile on my face. Everyone else who was talking, not my face, the famous social media platform, but anyone who was near him talking about his contract extension, because he said the words pretty close when answering a question about, hey, do you feel like you're close? And he was direct. Last night was like, oh my God, what is this segment? What do we do now? Do you know anything more about this? And what was your read on whether or not the Patriots should extend Rhamondre Stevenson?
Well, I love the candor, the honesty, and is willing to kind of help out the news cycle. That's for sure. I think pretty close was a bit of an overestimation. I don't think anything's imminent. I know they've been making some progress. I think there would be a hurdle to clear if something like that was going to be agreed upon in the next 24 hours. But look, things are moving in the right direction, and I think it's consistent with what Elliot.
Can you share what that hurdle might be?
Probably money.
Okay, good question by me. But you know that sometimes it's the length, right? Like it's, you know, how long do we want to keep you? And for running backs, that's the question of how much longer do we want to give you, you know, on this contract or this extension, right? Because you're in your physical prime now. What we're paying for is a player past his prime, theoretically, right?
I mean, honestly, it could be something as simple as structure. They could be sitting here saying, all right, you know, and I'm throwing stuff against the wall with this because they're just not going to open the window to these negotiations until they're done. But like, it could be something as simple as saying, all right, we're going to give you, we're good on the guaranteed money through 2 years, or, you know, 75% of it through 2 years. We just have to figure out how to structure it the best way to get this thing on the books in time. It could be something very similar to that. And that could be why Rhamondre is sitting there saying it's pretty close, because they've agreed on the important parts of the deal. They just need to work out some other things on the back end before everything is kind of passed between sides and agreed upon. So it could be something extremely simple where it just, you know, it's with a lot of stuff happening, could take 2 or 3 days, or it could take a week, whatever. But I think it's consistent with the way Elliott Wolf and Drake Maye have worked here. They know how important it is to reward the guys who have put in the time. And yeah, they understand there's absolutely a perception of sitting here saying, oh, well, you know, they're bringing back a bunch of guys from a 4-13 team, but it's not like they're bringing back the wrong guys. I mean, they're paying the good players, and you have to do that. The foundation has to start somewhere. You can't just change an entire locker room for the sake of change. And I know the other part too, I've probably mentioned it in the past, but like, it's true. It's worth repeating. When you pay the right guys and you pay the in-house guys, that carries weight with everybody in the locker room, because they've seen the work firsthand and they know that guy deserves to get rewarded. And that makes everybody else kind of want to work a little harder, because they're going to sit there and say, hey, you know what? I'm doing all the right things, and eventually my time will come, as opposed to saying, and I understand the reaction, you want to build a team like a Madden squad or whatever and just bring in the highest rated free agents, but that doesn't work in real life. And there is a method to this. So that's why I think I mean, even before Rhamondre said it yesterday, I would have, I'm trying to not say expected, predicted is the word I'm looking for, that he was going to be one of the next guys up for a new deal too.
So I was slightly skeptical just because of the nature of the position, the market, the way it's been treated. And the running back market got a big boost with top-of-the-line deals, Saquon Barkley being the most obvious example this past offseason. And that stuff is usually in flux. But I think we understand, again, the shelf life of a good to great running back is very short. You know, you're not seeing any 30-year-old running backs out there breaking extra tackles, leading the league in rushing, or even remotely close. Stevenson's not close to being 30. But again, this would be money spent, you know, down the road when he's not going to be probably as good as he is right now, or might be this season. Setting that aside, I did like the idea of this as kind of a leverage play, being like, we're close, because, and I'm not saying this is a leverage play, but if the deal's not done, no one's going to be blaming the guy that they're drafting in fantasy, whose jersey you're wearing at home, sitting on the couch on Sundays, and is probably their best offensive player, not named Mike Onwenu. So it'll be, hey, Elliott, what's going on, man? Yeah. And it'll be very dead in June, and we'll let this go by. But if it was supposedly closed in June, and he said this, you know, no one says this. What's happening? It can't be his fault. He wants to be here. Related to that, actually, let's stop, because I do want to bring up Devon Godchaux in a second. Any other offensive takeaways, whether they were the press conferences or just what you saw on the field? Jaheim Bell got a lot of love, I would say, from people who watched practice. Jalen Polk did. You know, he caught 2 touchdowns. One was an out route. He beat Christian Gonzalez. Another one was over the middle from Bailey Zappi. Good practice. 3 catches because they're in the tight red zone. 2 were touchdowns. Great. I'm not going nuts over it. But what did you make of it?
Yeah, any other takeaways? Polk had a really good day. I thought that was it was an impressive performance, because he was, I believe off the top of my head, he was productive with both starting caliber quarterbacks, which is important because you want balance there when it comes to your targets. And, you know, you don't want a situation. I don't want to, like, you know, just bombard some former player who's still in the league. But like you and I know, when there's a quarterback battle and one of those guys catches 30 passes in training camp from the backup and 4 from the starter, that usually isn't a good sign for that receiver. So when you see, you know, a balanced level of production, that's a good thing.
Yeah, he had one from each quarterback. So he was bouncing around. And, you know, I'll say this too, just because we're on receivers. the top receivers working most consistently with Jacoby Brissett were KJ Osborne, who had 1 catch on 4 targets, and Tyquan Thornton, who had 2 catches on 5 targets and really has not performed in a way that you would expect for a third-year guy who put on muscle and seems to have finally gotten it. Behind him was Juju, then sometimes Jalen Polk, and I'm forgetting who the 4/5 wide receiver was. But that's why I say one of each. They bounced around, but it was really the vets at the top. Demario Douglas worked second team most often. So,
yeah, Douglas's catch to close out Jacoby Brissett's first possession with the spike and the scream at the back of the end zone was a great catch, and it wasn't the best throw, but his ability to kind of lean back and fall and make a great play. Every ounce of that celebration was well earned.
Yes, yeah, full extension, 2 hands. I tweeted about it in time, and it was fit between 2 defenders. So I don't know if it was, when we talk about reaching back, it wasn't a great throw.
Yeah,
maybe
it might have been the only window. You're right. It might have been the only window. Maybe my criticism of the throw was unfair.
Okay, so we still have 3 months left until football, right? Right. So we still have to wait 3 months to go to a big game, right? Wrong. You can go to the NBA Finals with Game Time, my favorite ticket app, because Game Time is making NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier to get. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, and you can find killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guaranteed to watch the Celtics in the finals with Game Time. I scroll through Game Time all the time, not even for big games like the finals. I'm going to go to the Red Sox, take the tee in, boom, have a beer outside, wait at 7:01 for a 7:05 first pitch. I'm in. I've got one of the best seats at the house, sometimes up to 60% off. And you can do this, customizing your spot, customizing your section, viewing your view from the seat in your section. And it could be last-minute ticket deals, flash deals, zone deals, whatever you want. But in the meantime, get on down to Causeway, Game 1, Game 2, Game 5, hopefully not a Game 7, to watch the Celtics in the NBA Finals, where you can take the guesswork out of buying those finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, all you have to do is create a free account on the Game Time app and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today for last-minute tickets and the lowest price guaranteed. Last tidbits for me, JaMychal Hasty had more catches than anybody else at practice. I like him more and more, obviously, as a kind of a backup third down back. You ideally lean a lot on Stevenson, right? And Antonio Gibson, who I think has looked good, solid. I like what I've seen from him. Not necessarily loved or gone crazy. The tight ends were quiet. Hunter Henry had 4 catches on 6 targets. The 2 that he didn't catch were broken up. Speaks to a little bit of iffy separation. Austin Hooper had a lot of overthrows in his direction. Jaheim Bell we mentioned, but I just need to see more from him, and especially with pads on. We can all go crazy about these rookies, but this is Trey Nixon season, as you once reminded me. You didn't put it like that. You were kinder about it, but it was like, I want to see what the guy looks like with pads on. He's got speed. He should look good. Offensive line, still Chukwuma Okorafor at left tackle, Sidy Sow at left guard. I've heard really good things about Sidy Sow going into year 2. And look, he's in his mid-20s. There's a guy who rent a car already anywhere he wants to go. So he should look good. This is the physical prime of his career. David Andrews, I mentioned, backed up by Antonio Mafi, Nick Leverett, and, right guard was Mike Onwenu and Nick Leverett, and then Caden Wallace at right tackle, who I don't love the right tackle reps for Caden Wallace. If that's a dude who might be your left tackle in case Okorafor doesn't work out and he's just at his old college position, I probably would try to keep him there and then flex Calvin Anderson in and out, Badarian Lowe, but am I making too much of that?
No. I do remember Isaiah Wynn's rookie minicamp when they had Trent Brown at left tackle and Wynn at left guard. And it was like, oh, maybe that's the direction they're headed. And I can't remember how they started the season. They both played tackle. I can't remember which sides they were on. But this is the time, like Mayo said it before practice, this is the time to kind of see where guys fit, and maybe you can measure up their footwork and see if that's a side that they can handle or a space that they can handle, depending if they move in or out or whatever. But no, I mean, there's if it's training camp and the pads are on and they're working on the running game and they're still kind of mixing and matching quite a bit, then I would heighten the alarm bells.
Yeah, I just want him to get more run at left tackle. Like if he's really in the mix there. Maybe he's not. Maybe they just said Chukwuma Okorafor looks great. He's going to be our left tackle, and that's that. And Calvin Anderson's the backup. I don't know. Calvin Anderson has played on the left side. I would just want to give Wallace a little bit more run because they were so in transition. Why is he still right tackle? Let's pivot to defense. I would assume because of how much time he spent watching Drake Maye in the offense, there wasn't as much invested on this side of the ball, and there were some notable absences. Josh Uche, for reasons unknown, Sione Takitaki, Jelani Tavai, are dealing with injuries seemingly. Other injuries we should mention, Javon Baker didn't participate. Marcellus Dial, 6th-round corner, didn't participate. Jonathan Jones also hung out to the side, not a whole lot from him. But I want to go back to Godchow because we have all this buzz about Matt Judon. He participated. He talked about it today on ZLX, our good pal Mike Jardy. And, said, look, I'm not holding out. We're close on a contract. Is there any chance Devon Godchow is not close on a contract and he's upset about that? Because he's in the last year of his deal. It's over $7 million in base salary, but none of it is guaranteed. This is a dude who had a helmet on, but no jersey, just a sweatshirt. Didn't really stretch, hung out in the positional drills, and maybe he's nicked up. I don't know. But to me, that's what a hold-in would look like if it was a hold-in.
Maybe that's something I got to look into.
I've tried. I've got nothing. Otherwise, I would be sharing, not asking.
Yeah. No, that was off my radar. So I can't speak to that. But the one thing that kind of gets the wheels turning is this was a big it's 2 straight big off seasons for defensive tackles. So those guys are at a spot where they can kind of jump on the trend of the league and get paid. So I could certainly see him wanting more money if he believes it's earned. Absolutely.
Among those defensive tackles, of course, was Christian Barmore, who everyone now knows is the second highest paid Patriot ever by total, contract value. And so Devon's looking at him being like, come on. He's a good player, but I've been around. I'm a nose tackle. You don't have a real viable replacement for me when you want to go to those odd fronts. And I'm at the zero nose straight up over the center and got to control, play two gaps. Anyway, just something to keep an eye on. And it might not be anything, but I would think we talk about extension candidates. He's down the list if you're the Patriots, right? If Rhamondre is close, let's talk about Matt Judon. We don't know exactly where he is health-wise. Let's just assume 100%, whether it's now, whether it's going to be in a month. I'm encouraged if you're a fan that he doesn't want to hold in anymore. I think he called it trash last year. He doesn't want to do the agency side. He's got football goals. He wants to play football. He wants to be remembered as a great football player. But there's a business side of this. If you're the Patriots going, do we really want to pay a guy who's 32 coming off the edge and coming off injury? Where do you stand on everything about Judon?
That's the type of guy that you want to make sure is happy. And by all accounts, I've heard great things about him. I know he's very invested in the community here. He's done some outstanding work. I've crossed paths with him at various charity events. So, that's somebody that has certainly earned it. And I'm not saying you got to pay him like a top 5 pass rusher or anything like that. But, you look at the age and where he could slot and you want to make him maybe of comparable aged players, you want to make sure that he's one of the most well-paid players at his spot. I also thought it was interesting. I think another way he used to describe the hold-in situation was like a temper tantrum or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I've never encountered like a real issue with the way that he's conducted his business. I think he has done it at a professional level, and I would be surprised if the Patriots let something like this spiral out of control.
Okay. I don't think it'll happen either. And the thing we also need to all keep in mind, given we only talked about it most of this offseason, they still lead the NFL in cap space. Believe me, that's not lost on Matt Judon, Rhamondre Stevenson, Devon Godchow, and all of their respective agents. So they've got the money. They need to spend it. They've made clear they want to extend guys. They've extended guys. So for everyone else to go, hey, where's my money? Totally legitimate. It's just about how much and for how long. The chief obstacles, as we've just uncovered in contract negotiations 10 minutes ago. We'll come back to Judon in a second with a mailbag question. Anything else had your attention, though, on defense? I have a couple things here, but I'm curious, you jumping in day one after a few weeks away, what had your eye?
Christian Gonzalez stood out. he didn't have a perfect day. Like you said earlier, he got beat on a touchdown. I wonder if that was a type of play where if he were able to play with more physicality, he would have not allowed such a free release on that out route in the end zone. I mean, he gave up probably 3 catches. So not a, was it 4? Okay. Yeah. So not a Stephon Gilmore in 2019 type of camp, but I thought he had a good day. And what I like is the range, the how smooth he looks. He might not be like one of the best cornerbacks in the league this year, but his potential to get to that point, I think, is very real. And just the fluidity that he plays with, I thought he had a really good day. Again, you're going to get beat, especially in this setting. And Stephon Gilmore and Darrelle Revis a few years before him had two of the two most dominant camps from a cornerback I've ever seen, and it's not even close. So these shutouts, I think you have to appreciate them when they have them. He didn't have a shutout, of course, but I like the physical tools. I think he's the real deal.
Yeah, I'm with you. I had him as a dud. We do the studs and duds in my report. And the first line of that report, specifically Gonzalez, was, look, he's a victim of his own high standard. And that's a standard, as I'm want to remind people of. I would like to see him play a 5th NFL game before I fit him for a red and or gold jacket. But the potential, as you just referenced and detailed, is evident. It's there. It's obvious. That's why we're all so excited, even if maybe we need to pump the brakes, because this is a kid who was 20 when he was drafted. Specific to Monday, he did allow 4 catches and 5 targets, broke up the other one. He ran consistently with the ones. He can guard all types of receivers. You know, I'm not going to be up in arms or even lifting a finger over this one day, but I'm going to write it down because this is what happened. And he's a guy I would expect to have been better than 4 or 5. Opposite him, though, is something that caught my eye because they rotate a lot of young corners across from Christian Gonzalez in that starting spot. And even some who got kicked inside, like Isaiah Bolden. We're talking a 6'1", 6'2" corner, super athletic. And Doug asked Drake Maye about this before. He's like, hey, what do you like about Bolden in the slide? He's a big dude. Drake was like, that's a good question. And that was his exact tone. It's like, we kind of ran out of bodies. And that's what it is. So when I, to refer back to like Gerard being a little bit more open and I would say authentic with us, when he says, I don't know, or that's a good question, we're just trying it out, he usually means it. Won't always be true. But anyway, it was Bolden. It was Marco Wilson, who they signed late last year. And there's one other corner I'm forgetting now, which is absolutely going to kill me. It wasn't Azizi Hearn. Wasn't Austin. Marcus Jones. Who?
Was it Alex Austin?
Alex Austin, yes, thank you. So they all got time with the ones at various stretches, and they'll rotate in these things. But those guys, Bolden, Wilson, and Austin, held up pretty well. And I think they finished as a defense with 5 or 6 pass breakups, and Peppers had 1, and Duggars had the pick, and Gonzalez had 1. But I think this is a deeper group than I was giving it credit for based on just what I knew about them, the limited tape, and their athletic profiles. Like, I think these might be some hard cuts come end of August.
Yeah, that one's a little out of my comfort zone. I can't. I'm not going to blow smoke to the people.
I could hear the thud of the doo-doo that I just dropped on your doorstep and walked away from, being like, I hope. Like, I felt it was good information, but it was the wrong place to put that, I should say. It wasn't doo-doo. It was just, the wrong, I don't know. I'm out of analogies. Dallas is messing with my brain. But anything else catch your eye about the defense before we have 2 questions in the mailbag? We'll get you out of here.
No, the only thing I would just add to that is, look, the Patriots have proven time and again that they know how to scout cornerbacks. So if any of these guys do emerge into starters, then that wouldn't surprise me whatsoever.
Yeah. Marte Mapu would have pass breakup. Safety position is still going to be really, really good. That's the only other thing I would add. Jalen Hawkins, again, still has my eye, and he's more of a free safety, but I'm not expecting this giant leap. I just wish he had picked a different number because the man is wearing the number 32 in the exact same way that Devin McCourty wore it for over a freaking decade, and I can't get Devin out of my head. And even talked to Devin about it. He's like, "Yeah, I've heard that. He's doing the same thing." I go, "Yeah, it's anyway, no one cares."
Watching him playing that single high deep safety spot several times drove me absolutely bonkers. It was tough as somebody who's kind of flying in from 30,000 feet. And then the other part too is like with Julian Edelman in attendance, Tyquan Thornton can't wear number 11 and drop the first pass of practice. Like, that's just one of those things. Edelman couldn't have loved that.
No. Yeah, and he was there. Oh, speaking of Edelman, he'll be there for Tom Brady's event Wednesday night. I don't have anything on this. Is this in your comfort zone?
The Brady night?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to be there. I've heard it's Tom Brady. So where are we going with this?
I think I don't know, wherever you wanted to go with it. I know details have come out that Bill Burr is going to do an opening monologue or maybe MC. I think there's a country music star who has frequented Gillette Stadium. I know who will be there as well. I don't know if he's performing, but this is billed as kind of a show. So music, maybe some stand-up is going to go on. I know my parents are going. This is the extent. This is why I asked you. This is not great podcasting.
Bill Burr is my favorite comedian. So,
okay.
And I got in on the ground floor with that one. Have I ever told you can we get into story time or?
Yeah, definitely.
Stories here. So this is probably 2000. Yeah, it was 2010. I'm in year 2 at Nesson.com. This is the first year they started to put me on TV. And I want to say I'd been on TV like less than 5 times. I mean, this could have legitimately been like the second or third time I'd ever been on TV. So I'm in the offices, and somebody's like, "Oh, you got to go with the makeup artist." And I was like, "No, I don't." And they're like, "Oh yeah, you do. You got to go get makeup on right now." I'm like, "I've never done makeup. Like, I don't need to do the makeup." And they're like, insistent. No, like, we paid a makeup artist to come in. Like, everybody's doing the makeup. You need to go do makeup. And I was like, I really, really don't want to do makeup. And they're like, well, you're going to do makeup if you want this TV check. So I'm like, well, then I'm going to go do the makeup, but I'm not going to be happy about it. So I'm like going away. And as I'm walking away, one of the producers is like, oh, I got to go let Bill in. And I don't know who Bill is. Could have been an intern, could have been somebody without a key card, but they had to let somebody named Bill in. So I go into this makeup room, and I'm getting all this makeup put on for the only time in my life. This was ridiculous. So then all of a sudden I hear a very familiar voice coming down the hallway toward the studio. And I'm like, of course, I'm going to get a chance to meet Bill Burr for the first time and maybe the only time. And I'm sitting here with like makeup caked on my face. And I'm like, this is, and I'm 27 at the time. Like, I'm not loving the fact that, they put me through this whole experience, but I get out there and like, I got to introduce myself to this guy as my favorite comedian. And I'm in my own head, of course, as anybody that young would be. And he couldn't have been nicer. I was ready to get like roasted for wearing makeup. All he wanted to do was just talk Patriots. And like, this whole thing was probably like a minute or two, and it was really cool. I was very excited about that whole thing. And then I went in the next day and I told one of the producers, I was like, what was with the makeup situation last night? And he's like, well, you should have just said no. I'm like, I did about 42 times. He's like, well, from now on, like, if they try to tell you, just tell them no and walk away. So the only time I've ever worn makeup in my entire life happened to be the time that I met my favorite comedian, but thankfully he couldn't have been nicer.
Good. Yeah, I was, as you were telling that story, I'm like, okay, what's Bill going to say? What would the joke be? What would the first, like, one-liner be, seeing you dolled up like a clown? Which, for the record, nothing wrong with wearing makeup. It's a comfort thing. I've never had that forced upon me over at NBC. I would decline it politely. I think probably take it after the second push, but kind of understand why you were reluctant. And that's a good story. You love hearing those where it's, the celebrity story could go one of two ways. These are people who have a lot of attention, who are always sought out, who are always stopped in the street. They could be a total jerk because sometimes they also just deal with a lot of jerks. And he just took the time and he talked some Pats. He was an everyman.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Cool. Okay. Speaking of Pats, 2 questions. First one, Matt Judon. This is from Lawrence. Are the Patriots looking to sign Judon for 1 or 2 years? Would you be willing to go for 2 years?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know he's had the recent injury. But like, he's a pro. He's not somebody that you can never fully predict how the injury path will take a player. But he's not somebody that I would expect is all of a sudden going to fall off a cliff with the way that he prepares himself. Just fall off a cliff in terms of his body breaking down or anything like that. I would be comfortable paying him.
I would too. And again, the question is always money, right? Like, this is the same thing with trades when they come up and we're doing segments or podcasts or radio, and it's like, oh, they should trade up. Well, what are you giving up? What are you getting in return? I need specifics here. And I remember the numbers we threw around last year. around 15, 16 million for guys who are on the edge. Trey Hendrickson in a really comparable deal. Now he's upset with his contract. I would also go 2 years, but my push would be that 2026 season, right? So if it's an extension, 1 year would be 2025 next year, and then 2 would be 26. It's going to be kind of an empty year, like a fake year, right? No guaranteed money. We'll make it whole now because he's at about 7 or 8, and we have to reconfigure for cap reasons anyway. We'll give you a full good 2025 year. You're going to be 33. When you're 34, like, you got to earn it. Maybe we can revisit that later. And if he insists on that being a little bit more of a partial guarantee in 26, then you got to give me something now, right? It's not going to be all 3 years. You're made whole now. We'll give you 2 full years guaranteed because, again, just like Stevenson, typically with running backs, we're not paying for prime Matt Judon anymore. This dude's a 4-time Pro Bowler. I don't think he's going to get to 6. Hopefully he does, but I would not bet on that. I don't think most people would. So that's how I would approach this. One more question for you. This question comes from Tatish, the DM today. With close to $46 million in cap space and June 1st in the rearview mirror, will the Patriots look to sign veteran free agents recently let go with a post-June 1 designation to supplement the roster? If so, any names on offense or defense that may be a good fit? So this is a small number of players, June 1 designations. My answer is no, because they had a undrafted rookie receiver out of Doug tweeted this, I think Stanford yesterday, try out on a rookie basis. And we know this is a youth movement. So I'm still on the record, would love David Bakhtiari to come on down, Charles Leno, someone who's played left tackle, even if you're older. But they're embracing not a tank, but just a complete makeover and embracing all of the young players that they're going to play.
Yeah, they're in a tough spot. I'm with you on the left tackle situation, but realistically, what is their ceiling this season? I mean, even if so you have to overpay in order to get the guy in. That would take away, I'm not using this as an excuse, but that would take away from what you could potentially spend next offseason, when Wolf and Mayo should have a better idea of where they're going to be going into 2025, when the money would be more valuable to use.
Burning some cash, baby, yes.
Right? You have to be cognizant of the process. And, if all of a sudden a game-breaking receiver gets cut loose or becomes available and you have a chance to really make your offense more dynamic over the next 3 or 4 years by giving away a big contract. And again, that's probably a bad example, because what guy is going to get cut loose at this stage who can offer that? But yeah, I mean, usually you're going to see a lot of those guys just take less money for a 1-year deal to go to try to, knock off the Chiefs or something like that. I mean, and realistically, you don't see that happening in Foxboro in 24.
Yeah, and there are some good names out there, and we could parse through and go through them, like this, and I could DM him more and explain why. But I just think this isn't an answer that goes case by case, right? Why do you add this receiver? Why do you add that offensive tackle? The broad answer covers all of them, and the broad answer is they're going to play the young guys to develop them, draft and develop. Elliott Wolf told us this at the Combine. They followed through in free agency. They did so in the draft. He's told you his plan. They executed it, from the quarterback and how they handled that, as you reported around the Combine as well. So that's what they're doing. And so the tie is going to go to the young kid, and they're going to deal with the growing pains. And honestly, they have the latitude and the time to do that. So this is now what they're going to do. I think it's the right time for it. Again, it's going to be a lot of pain, but that's why you're not going to see them import all these veterans, no matter who you want to name, because the goal isn't to win now. It's to lay the foundation, speed, and develop and grow. And it's going to be a rough one. Patriots have the second toughest schedule in the league. Yeah. Year after having the toughest. I think they will have somewhere along the lines a big upset in a way that we have not seen. Their only hallmark win over the last 5 years was 4 years was Buffalo last year at home, and that was in late October. And before that, they beat the Ravens in 20 in a rainstorm that Bill may or may not have conjured or set up right as the Ravens were trying to drive down a 2-minute drill at the end. But that's it. And so I think there will be a lot of losses, but they're gonna punch above their weight, and the record's not going to be good. But I've decided this is my take in the season. It might be the Niners, it might be the Bills at the end again, but they're gonna get someone because it's the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, like, even just getting back to the ceiling part, like if they win 8 games because Drake Maye really, I'm not saying they're going to win 8 games. I saw your head basically almost twist off your body. But if they win 8 games, as with the 90 that'll get pared down that they currently have now, and it's because Drake Maye plays really well and the offense starts to take shape and the defense reaches its potential, they'll be ecstatic. If they win 8 games because they fill out their roster with like 6 or 7 veterans who are not going to be part of their long-term plans, and it's sort of a mask more than anything because the young guys didn't develop and whatever, then, you know, that's going to hurt their draft stock. And I don't think they should be as happy about winning 8 games that way. It took me a long way to try to get your head screwed back on the right way. So I apologize for the whiplash there, but that's kind of what I was getting at.
Well, I think it's, you know, we talk about short-term, long-term planning. You get all those veterans, let's say they go balls out instead, do the exact opposite of what I just talked about. That is a sugar high. That is just instant gratification for instant gratification's sake. You're not going to go anywhere with the players that are still on the street, not because the Patriots left them on the street, but because all 32 NFL teams said, that's okay. We don't need you. You know, like, okay, you win 7-8 games. What then? You're not drafting at the top where you can get potentially a franchise left tackle or a number 1 wide receiver for Drake Maye, provided that he develops. So, you know, that's where you want to be. One more draft that high, get a guy to premium position, supplement the roster in free agency, keep extending guys you want to keep, let the Trent Browns, the Devontae Parkers, and expensive core special teamers walk out the door. So that's that. All right, we are heading into the offseason. Are you going to be at training camp much, if at all, this year? Maybe doing another tour?
I'm doing another tour, still in the very early stages of putting that together, and hopefully it's wrapped up within the next 3 weeks, ideally. But depending on whether I go back out a second or third time, will factor into how much I'm down at Foxboro. I mean, I'm going to make it a point to be there. I just don't know if it'll be one day like last year, or if I'm at home for a chunk in the middle or end of August. I don't even know what their joint practice schedule looks like, to be honest. So I could be talking and you're sitting there like, well, no, they're going to be in Nashville that week, dummy. But yeah, if it all works out and I'm not on the road, I want to be down there to see like just how that quarterback battle shakes out, and just to see like some of the new things that Mayo and Wolf have implemented and how this franchise continues to just look different, because it's a new era and it's fascinating, and it's not that hard for me to find my way down there.
No, it's not. I think you will be gone when they have joint practices. Last I heard, I think they're going to shoot for 1 practice. It might be before the Eagles preseason game. Don't hold me to that. And part of this is, you know, a lot of fights on day 2. Guys get hot. They get worn down. They're seeing the same dudes, you know, chirping builds up quickly. But we'll see. They have not officially announced anything yet. I hope you were there so we can, you know, put our on the table and see who wrote the longer practice report, for better or for worse.
You know, as I started brainstorming how I was going to do the practice report late yesterday, I'm like, you know what? I focus so much on the quarterbacks that I can't do my traditional one. Like I didn't tally the receiver catches. I had them written down, but I didn't tally them. And I didn't focus so much on the offensive line or the defense, because it's just like, you know, I got to play to my strengths at this point. It's hard to like give it the necessary attention that I used to give them for years, because I was down there so regularly and I knew everything about all 90 guys in camp, or let's say 75 of the 90 guys in camp. Whereas I can't do that right now. So it wasn't a 3,000, 4,000 word report. It was a solid 2,000. You know, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens on Wednesday.
Okay, we sound like such a-holes, meaning more me. Like, no, no one cares. You also don't have to do that because you're a national NFL insider, and you don't have to spend any more time in this rinky-dink podcast because you're also dad of 2. Thank you for coming from the bus stop to the show.
Trying to rip me away from it right now.
That was my cue. Maybe we'll have them on in the summer while you're gone off the tour, and we'll tell Jeff stories.
They would love that.
Caitlin too. Okay. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate the time. We'll be back next week. I think Fitzy is going to come back. You will have behind-the-scenes stories from Tom Brady's retirement ceremony. We will do our Patriots scrimmage draft, the 3rd annual, which feels crazy to say in this podcast, and more mailbags. We have someone from Ireland who's going to zoom in. Mike Clancy will be on the show. No mail fan today, so this is it. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody. See you next week.